Salutations, respected viewers. This video is about the Brexit imbroglio. What is going to happen? Well, where are we now? The withdrawal agreement has been finalised between the United Kingdom and the European Union. Donald Tusk announced that just the other day, so they don't need all 27 EU member states, the remaining ones, to agree. They need a majority representing 65% of the population, at least 20 member states, and represent that proportion of the population. So they're going to get it. It's a racing certainty. So anyway, May will sign. There's a last-minute concession on Gibraltar, written assurances to Spain in relation to Gibraltar. If you don't know, Gibraltar is a peninsula off the coast of Spain, but it's been controlled by the United Kingdom, well, since even before the UK existed. Been controlled by England and Wales, first of all, since 1704, then the Treaty of Utrecht, when it was ceded to the United Kingdom. I won't go into all the rigmarole about that. But anyway, Spain quite want it back. The Gibraltarians have voted by 99% twice to stay connected to the United Kingdom. They're not actually in the UK, they're a crown dependency. So Gibraltar's not actually been given to Spain, but Spain's going to have a bit more say. Now, I agonised over this, and I narrowly agree with the withdrawal agreement. There's much in it I dislike, but I'm worried the consequences of rejecting it, possibly leaving without an agreement, which would be not as bad as remaining, but remaining is probably a more likely scenario if this is not agreed, for reasons I shall elucidate in a moment. So it's almost breaking point for me over Gibraltar, but I thought, well, they're not actually giving Gibraltar away. And it's odd that Europhiles should make such a song and a dance of this, saying, oh, this is outrageous, because the whole thing about the European Union is sharing sovereignty. And if Gibraltar's sovereignty to be shared, why would you object so vehemently? Another thing is ridiculous. They're strenuous hyperbole over this, saying, oh, well, Hitler couldn't take Gibraltar, but, you know, May's giving it away. How grossly insulting. Don't offend the Kingdom of Spain by likening it to the Third Reich. Nothing bad's going to happen to the Gibraltarians, well, even if they were forced to join Spain. So anyway, there's going to be a vote in the House of Commons. Well, there'll be a vote in the House of Lords too. Now remember, the Lords can delay by a maximum of 1 year. But anyway, there's a Salisbury Convention. The Lords doesn't block things that were in the manifesto, and it was in the Conservative Unionist Party's manifesto that they would implement withdrawal from the European Union. So the 315 Conservative members of Parliament, 320 is a majority in the House of Commons. That's mainly because Sinn Féin doesn't show up. They abstain. They refuse to take a vote to Her Britannic Majesty. And this is again is an odd thing, because if they were there, they could prevent Brexit that they so heartily detest. But on point of principle, they refuse to represent their constituents in Westminster. So the Speaker doesn't vote either. So 315 Conservatives, but they're not all going to take the Tory whip, even if it's a three-line whip. That means a very strong insistence by the government, the governing party, or whoever your party is, that you must vote this way. There's one-line whip, which is encouragement, two-line whip, which is a stronger encouragement, three-line whip, you must do it. It's a breach of discipline if you don't. But some people will defy a three-line whip. So there are 10 Democratic Unionist Party members of Parliament, and they've had a confidence and supply agreement with the Conservative Party for the past couple of years. But they want their cake and eat it. The DUP campaigned to leave the European Union. However, there's this porous border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, people going back and forth all the time, almost never stopped, never checked, working in one, studying in the other, living in one, working in the other, things like that. But the DUP want their cake and eat it. They want to leave the European Union, but they don't want to go back to the era we had until the late 90s, which was soldiers everywhere, borders, checks, stop your car, hello, who are you, may I see some ID, things like that. And also be looking at goods and services to see they conform with various regulations. Now, by the late 90s, it wasn't really the goods and services so much because the European Union existed. Prior to that, the European Economic Community, there was a bit of that, even in the early days. The Troubles were going on, that was the main thing. And dissident Republican groups, that means ultra-nationalists in Ireland, who want to take Northern Ireland out of the UK, united with the Republic of Ireland. Some of these extreme nationalists would like to restart the conflict, and they see that the friction that would be caused by a hard border, by physical checks, would be something they could exploit. They would seek to capitalise this to bring back the conflict. So the DUP want their cake and eat it. You'll want to leave the EU, but you don't want a hard border. Well, it's very difficult to do this. But the magic solution was Northern Ireland will remain in regulatory alignment with the European Union unless the UK and the EU find some solution. And there's going to be a backstop. That would be the default setting. So the DUP say we don't want this. We don't want Northern Ireland to be treated different from the rest of the United Kingdom. But Northern Ireland has been considered a special case within the UK for almost a century. So that's why I think this is the best solution. It does involve May reneging on a pledge of the DUP. So the DUP are they going to vote against? About 250 loyal Conservatives who will vote Theresa May's way, who will vote for this withdrawal agreement. So who are the other Conservatives? Well, about 50 are hardline Brexiteers. They will reject the withdrawal agreement because it gives too many concessions to the EU, and they're willing to leave the European Union without any agreement, without it being clear what we're going to do on trade and so forth. There are about 15 hardline Remain MPs in the Conservative and Unionist Party. They will vote against the withdrawal agreement for the opposite reason, because they don't want to leave the European Union at all. So there we are. 250 votes for May, and she needs 320. What's she going to do? Where's she going to get the other 70? It's very hard to see. So of the Labour Party's 260 odd, how many are going to vote for this? Not many. Thought to be 20 or 30, or real Brexiteers who think this is about the best deal we're going to get. So May has correctly said that the European Union is not going to give us a better deal, and kicking me out is not going to improve the situation. And I suspect she's right. She's an unshowy person, fairly unimpressive Prime Minister, quite different from that showman and PR spiv Cameron who preceded her. So she's bland. To put it this way, her degree subject was geography, a vicar's daughter, cloyingly respectable. She worked in the Bank of England, in the back office, not even one of the glamorous posts. So that's more or less her personality. So what happens if it is defeated? Fly to Brussels, some last-minute haggling, try to pocket some concessions, but they'll be only cosmetic. There won't be anything significant. And Brussels and Strasbourg, they're fed up with this as well. They want to move on and say, we bent over backwards to accommodate you. Actually, they've got quite a lot out of her. What could they change? The 39 billion payment could make that a little bit lower. Very few of the regulations otherwise say, leave, go then, without a deal. But it would be a headache for the EU too, because it would blow a hole in their budget, the UK being the second largest net contributor. And there are other problems for them. It will obviously impact their trade as well. Not as significantly, because the remaining European Union will have almost 10 times the population of the UK. So it goes to a vote. If it's defeated, and if there are no last-minute concessions or a second vote, it could be a vote of no confidence. Would Theresa May resign straight away if she lost this vote? I don't think so. I think she's made of stronger stuff. She's quite mettlesome because there's been such a headache. If I was her, I would have been enormously frustrated. They've been burning the midnight oil with parleying all the time, and then there's all this carping from the sides. Nothing's ever good enough for the hardline leavers. On the other hand, the Remainers go against the will of the people. So I don't think she'd resign straight away, but there might be a vote of confidence in the government, and if she loses that, she would resign. Would she win a vote of confidence in the government? Well, as I pointed out, the Conservatives have got a minority in the House of Commons. Would the DUP vote their way? The DUP might even abstain on the Brexit vote, by the way, because they don't like it. But the alternative, they think, might be leaving without an agreement, and that would bring back a hard border in Ireland with physical checks. Are these goods and services meeting our regulations, and make trade quite difficult? So unionists, they want to stay in the United Kingdom, but they recognise that travelling freely across the border is very popular. So they don't want Jeremy Corbyn in, who's very much aligned with Sinn Féin. That's the hardline nationalist party in Ireland, including Northern Ireland. And that's that. And they don't want to stay in the European Union either. So the DUP are a bit of a quandary. So abstaining might be the most sensible thing for them to do. But oddly, they're kingmakers at the moment. Even though they're tiny, they come from a part of the UK with only 3% of the population. And that's why I think that having the Northern Ireland in regulatory alignment is best. It's best for Ireland, for where I come from. But also, the 3% of the population, only about 1.5% of the UK population are unionists in Northern Ireland who voted to leave. So they're the only people being inconvenienced. Sorry, we can't keep everybody happy. So vote of no confidence could be an election. Well, but even there's no vote of no confidence, there's an attempt to oust her in the Conservative Party. The knives are out for May. You know, she called that early election. She had a massive lead, which eroded with a leaden-footed campaign. Signatures have already been collected. 48 are needed by Conservative MPs to trigger an election contest. Hand the signatures to Sir Graham Brady, saying get rid of Theresa May. Sir Graham is the chairman of the 1922 committee, former baby of the House. Well, if there was a vote of confidence, I suspect that the DUP would vote for Theresa May because they don't want Corbyn in. But some of the Remain MPs in her own party would vote against. That's only about a dozen. And of the hardline Brexiteers in her party, that's about 50. A lot of them would vote against. I think not enough, because they haven't got the 48 already. BoJo would, because he wants the top job for himself. Jacob Rees-Mogg would be against. He's been very open about saying this. But if she was brought down, then she'd have to stay on as in a caretaker capacity for about a month, whilst the Conservative Party elected a new elected a new leader and therefore Prime Minister just about in time for Christmas. Sajid Javid would be a front runner. BoJo has always favoured top spot for him. As I think BoJo is Bozo the clown. I think he's a busted flush now, and people recognise that he's positioned himself entirely cynically. He's in it for himself. Yeah, he just wants to wear the crown. He who wields the knife never wears the crown. Michael Hestine used to quote that in 1990, when the time Thatcher fell. He thought it was some famous historical quotation, but no, he invented it. So that was that. A new Prime Minister I don't think would really help. Javid, by the way, was a Remainer. Philip Hammond was a Remainer. These are the credible people who might take over. And this is one of the accusations levelled at May. She didn't believe in Brexit because she campaigned to remain. But, you know, it would be seen to be more reasonable in a sense having a Remainer. She was a Remainer, but even she is trying to implement it, and it's a moderate version of Brexit. And one of the reasons why Remainers ought to vote for this, well, those who campaigned for Remain a couple of years ago, is it's giving you some of what you want. It's almost like being half in the EU, saying we have to go all the way out then. That really doesn't make any sense if you're a Remainer. You think you'd want a more moderate edition of Brexit. But anyway, another possibility is another general election, especially if there's a vote of no confidence in the government. This would be a good chance for Labour. They're riding high in the polls, neck and neck between the two parties. The Tories have been ripping themselves apart for a couple of years over this European Union issue. The press is no longer so hostile to Corbyn. His party is a lot more united. And Corbyn could come in. I think he'd be hard-pressed to negotiate a better deal, actually. And I think some Labour MPs are sensible enough to recognise this. One of the reasons why this withdrawal agreement might just pass is there'll be huge pressure from business leaders, from trade unions, just end the uncertainty, get it done, because people are in doubt. There's no longer the feel-good factor. There's a loss of market confidence. The pound is sliding. If we vote for this withdrawal agreement, at least we know what the situation is, and the issue is sorted. It's over. It's not perfect. But this controversy, this maelstrom of political anarchy almost, this guessing game about the future that's been going on for about 3 years would finally be put to bed, and the economy could grow again, the pound would jump, all the rest of it. But anyway, Labour would probably be the largest party of this general election, but again, they'd be hard-pressed to form a majority. They might be lucky. You know, it often depends how the psephology pans out, how efficiently distributed the vote is. The Conservatives got a dozen seats in Scotland last time, their best result for years in Scotland, for decades. But I think because Scotland's very Remain, the most Remain country of the United Kingdom, the Conservatives would fall back there, despite them having a popular leader on the ground, Ruth Davidson. She's not a Westminster leader, she's a Holyrood one. The Conservatives would do badly in metropolitan areas, which tend to be quite Remain, particularly London. They do just fine in eastern England or rural England, where Leave was very popular. The Liberal Democrats would come up a bit, because remember, they're actually absolutely rock bottom last time. They did even worse in 2017 than they'd done 2 years before. So Corbyn would probably come in as Prime Minister, but he'd have to have confidence to supply from the SNP and or the Lib Dems. Labour would probably claw back a few seats in Scotland. The SNP got 35 constituencies in Scotland. So it might be a minority government or some sort of coalition with the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems might be a little bit reluctant to be in coalition, partly because they dislike Corbyn, but also because they're in coalition with the Tories only a few years ago, and they'd be seen as complete tarts. You're the Tories' bitch, now you're Labour's bitch. On the other hand, they could say this is a unique situation because of Brexit. We need to prevent Brexit, or at least a moderate version of it. And their condition of forming a coalition with Labour might be either no Corbyn, have to choose a new leader, or we need a second referendum. Now, Corbyn's policy has been against a second referendum. We need to respect the result of there. But as the price of a coalition, he might agree to it. So you could have two options: remain, leave again, or better, accept this withdrawal agreement, or leave without an agreement, or remain in the European Union. So Remain is desperate to have a second bite of the cherry, just like in the Republic of Ireland, us being forced to vote again on Nice to get it right, as the Europhile elite would see it, or indeed on Lisbon. So what you could do is ranked preferences, because if you have three options, anyone who gets just over 33% has won, and that would be illogical and unfair. So they'll say, all right, you can choose your first preference, your second preference, by default the last one's the third. And we could do it that way. And I think that's the most likely thing that would happen. So if there was another referendum, I suspect Remain would win, especially if it was a 50-50. Because the polls show Remain slightly ahead, about 52%. Oddly, that's where they were when the actual referendum took place. Well, they didn't get 52, they got 48. It was flipped. It was slightly wrong. It was at the edge of the margin of error. So even if there's not a Labour government, if there's a Conservative government, if they can't get this through the House of Commons, I think a second referendum is the obvious way to do. The Conservatives don't want another election. They called an early election in 2017. People are fed up of it. People don't want another early election only a year and a half later. And as I say, I think they would do badly. They'd be pretty unlikely to win. Certainly whoever wins, either major party, wouldn't be a decisive result. So I think Remain would narrowly win. So ironically, I think of all the possible outcomes, remaining, leaving without an agreement, or leaving with this withdrawal agreement, slightly most likely is Remaining, which I don't want. I didn't believe that Leave would win in 2016, and we did. So there we are. It remains to be seen. Perhaps I'm very foolish to venture an educated guess about what will transpire. Well, I've got to say this, it's certainly not dull watching the current political scene, but please God, the whole thing will be sorted out. If there's Remain, or indeed this withdrawal agreement, the pound will go up. In Remain, it'll go up very much. It's lost almost 20% of its value over the past 3 years. And other things, then the economy will start to grow quite well. But I'm not so much into money, and I was being willing to make sacrifices. It's hit my finances a lot, Brexit, but it's been worth every penny.